This session is about big data. A few years ago, it was about GPS data, smartphones, the cloud. Today, it's about AI. Big data is everything, big data is everywhere. It's the driving force behind all major corporate decisions. On that note, speakers, thank you for being here. My first question is, I want to understand how do HR professionals in India make sure that they use big data and translate them into data-informed decision-making, and in that way, they also optimize HR processes. So let's start with you.
Okay. So I divide any kind of data or analytics into 4 parts. One is your operational analytics, which is we do it on normal basis, which is required to run our operations. The second level is your advanced, which is based on some kind of strategy initiative you want to run in the organization. The third level is also advanced, but that is basically based on some kind of objective you want to achieve, like specific, maybe focused on something, recruitment or any kind of sub-functions of HR. And the last one is predictive, right? So in my opinion, I think we do all 3, 1, 2, 3. Predictive is still in a very niche stage in my organization. But yes, in the past we have done very quickly, we were discussing outside, we have done a very good analysis on the happiness for the people. So like measuring one thing, this was very difficult. And we have done that as well. In my last company, which was Happiest Minds Technologies, we used to monitor the happiness quotient for the people. What time of the day, which day of the week, or which team is feeling happy and maybe they are stress-free in what circumstances, and then address the specific issues with those managers, with those leaders, and address those with certain engagements and initiatives which we used to run in the organization. So I would say that 1, 2, 3 is definitely been addressed in our organization currently as well. But predictive, I think, still I'm not very satisfied with the kind of tools we have currently, and the input of data is also questionable. So I just, because we have very less time, put this to other panelists.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. Well, given the fact that we have a slightly tighter time frame, so I'll be quick. So firstly, to the question about data, I think just to give a sense to the audience, the data market, big data market in India today is something around $2 billion US. In next 3 years, it's going to grow to about $3 billion US. That's the landscape that we are dealing with. That's the growth. With respect to the question that you asked about the utilization of the insights, and I saw on the in the topic of the session, it was mentioned from big data to smart insights. I would also add one more word, smart and pragmatic insights. Because howsoever smart it may be, if it is not helping the business, being of practical use, it is no good. And I'll just give an example, slightly going back into the history. And it's a beautiful example of the data, but how it can be used in a manner that it could lead to a counterproductive action. Back in the World War II, the armed forces of the US allies were facing very heavy casualties, particularly the Air Force, and close to about 90,000 casualties. And there was a research that was carried out. They engaged a very famous mathematician called Abraham Wald. And the US Air Force had a very detailed mapping, and they looked at the places where the planes received maximum bullets, so maximum bullet holes. They looked at the entire data, and what they figured out was that the wings and the tails of the planes received the maximum bullet holes. It means they were very vulnerable, right? So that's what they concluded. So the armed forces of the US concluded that we need to strengthen or armor these portions, wings and tails. And here comes Abraham. He said, wait a minute, guys. I think you are leading to a wrong conclusion. What about those planes which received maximum bullets on the other parts of the planes and never came back? The officers asked, what do you mean? Then he explained that, look, the planes that you are seeing on the ground are the planes which actually came back, which avoided the attacks. And these are the planes who received maximum bullets on the wings and the tails. It means that the planes which received the maximum bullets on the engines, they never came back. So rather than strengthening and armoring your wings and tails, which is the conclusion that you are leading to, my submission will be, leave it there. These are good. Wings and tails are fine. They are strong enough. Rather, armor or strengthen your engines. Because if they were strong, they also could have come back with large number of bullet holes on the engine. So my submission to the team also would be, in addition to being smart decision maker in terms of using insights from the data, also look at the pragmatic side. More later, next one to my other colleague.
Thanks. It was a lovely analogy you drew, and it made me think. You know, and I want to caution the HR community here. See, we generally tend to clung to the fad and fashion of whatever comes next, you know, whether it's an AI or, but let's, I think, step back and, because AI and big data, it's an expensive proposition. You know, it takes a lot of SNA from your P&L, you know, and though we want to utilize it, but we need to be wise here. We can't be doing research for an obvious solution, right? Because it takes away your speed of transformation. While we need to be very, very wise with these tools, how can it add speed to your transformation in the organization? Because if you get fascinated by big data, which is a good capability to add, I see a lot of organizations trying to build the data or build that capability within the organization. Maybe there are portion in the organization where we can outsource this, you know, where we already have the capability, because it costs money, it costs time. So first thing, pick the playfield right. Look at where are you playing. Do you really want to build the capability of AI and data, big data in the organization, or do you want to buy it from outside? That's easy proposition. Second is, it is very important to understand what are the playfields we are playing. Because if you are playing for a long-term strategy on the big data, it may help you, or it can be disastrous. If you are playing it in an execution, and I'll give you an example. SKF, when we joined, the entire team joined 4 years back, our stock prices of 1,500. Today we have tripled the stock prices, right? And I think we used big data very, very smartly. We had to build our sales force capability, because look at the variability of, you know, so many competence to manage, you know, so many battery of tests to be done, so many values to be tested. Then there are market competencies. Then there are variability in the distribution of the south and the north and the east and the west. And then you need to put the right person on the field to get your money back home. So we use big data at that particular place to build a market capability. Now, when today my guy goes to the market and we have enabled them with all the insights of the market, all the product insight, all the capability insight, all the distribution, pricing, everything, they go and get the money back. And I think the point what I'm trying to drive is choose wisely what's important for the organization. Don't get swayed with the big data and AI. It can be crazy, taking all your SNA and it can add a bottom line to your organization. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Mr. Mukherjee, your thoughts on this?
I'm usually not very tensed whenever I'm in a panelist, but today, being sitting with such senior eminent speaker, I'm feeling very nervous. Would it be possible for you to pep me up by clapping for me?
Come on, people.
तो वाइफ ने बोला था कि कॉन्फ्रेंस में जाके कुछ ऐसा बोलना कि सब आपके लिए ताली बजाए. Now that have been achieved, and now that I have your attention, I would surely agree with what Gautam bhai had to share, that don't find for a solution for something which is very, very obvious, and also not to get swayed away with what social media or everyone is doing. We have to also understand its relevancy with the organization that one is associated with. I would just give one recent example that I faced since I manage the learning and development vertical. So in our company, one of the business heads, he wants his team to undergo a data analytics training so that we are much more structured, we are well driven with our decision making rather than taking on whims and fancy. We are much more structured in our decision making. But when I took a pre-assessment test of the team that was supposed to undergo the training, they don't even realize what is the need of it. They are so disconnected with their leaders on that part, that whether we need it also or not. So smart insight to dur ki baat hai. Unless and until I first realize what is the value of it, how big data, how data analytics, how this churning would help me further, enable me further, equip me further, unless until that is clear, I think any organization or any audience won't be ready to work on it. That is my thought on it.
Thank you, thank you. Moving on, there are some ethical strings attached to sourcing data. The way we source data also matters. How is corporate India addressing that issue? So
I think that is not a big issue because the data which is there, if I'm assuming that the organizations are collecting it within the organization and they're not intruding. So if the data is like this, that how much time I am on a Gmail or a LinkedIn website during my office hours or something like that, till that time I think is okay, because otherwise, see, another factor here is that you can have all that data which is placed, but we are forgetting one thing: we are dealing with humans here. So collecting data for the humans is very complex. It is not that easy. We can always say and sell it like this, oh, we have this data, and that's why I was telling into the operational and other things. So operational data is very easy to collect. After that, any AI based data, I am doubtful and totally doubtful about this, that it can give you a very, very directive insight. Because if you have data also, and I've seen my leadership, they don't trust the data. Honestly. Because we work on two aspects. One is a fact and assumption. When I question anything which they are questioning me on the performance management or ratings or talent management ratings, their boxes and other things, they will always come with a perception, assumption. They never deal with the data. They'll say, this is my experience. So everything goes with the experience. The experience bol diya to sab kuch chala jayega. Because data aapka, it's rubbish. So you have to see, as Mr. Singh was saying, relevant to hona chahiye, and data collection is, that way is complex. Ab authenticity ka dekhna hai, to then it is a double kind of edged sword, कि भी कौन सा data collect करने की बात कर रहे हो. If you are collecting the data which is your usual operational data, I don't think there is a problem and any compliance issues in that. But is the data which involves my personal behaviors, my wants, my personal involvement in the organization, behavioral, I think we still need a lot of laws, regulations there, which is not there in India currently. This is my perception.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a very important question you have raised. So I'll deal with 2-3 different dimensions of this. Firstly, let's understand why there is a business case for this. There is a strong business case because any company, if it understands people, if it understands the habits of people, their spending pattern, their habits, their values, their thinking patterns, it is sharper in terms of making recommendations to them for making purchases. Fast forward, a very recent study on Amazon recently showed that up to, Amazon runs a recommendation engine based upon, they keep on collecting a lot of data based upon your spending pattern, based upon how you travel, the places you travel, the kind of posts you put on the LinkedIn, on the social media, on Twitter, Facebook. So they are already building a lot of insight about you, about all of us. And then they make recommendations to you, which is run as an independent business. So what they have estimated, because of the efficiency of this recommendation engine, as much as up to 35% of the sales could be attributed to the effectiveness of this recommendation engine which Amazon runs, which is very large. I mean, that itself is a very compelling case about the authenticity and the usage of the data. Now, bigger question is, which you asked, the question of ethics and privacy. Now, let me deal with the question of ethics and privacy from an Indian context based upon my own personal example. About 4 or 5 years ago, when big data and analytics was just getting into practice, my team and myself, we ran a very detailed exercise on predictive analytics on attrition, large sales force. So the stakes were very high. So mandate was, even if we are able to control it by about 5 or 7%, that much would be the upside to the business. And therefore, we undertook a project on analytics, predictive analytics, on as to who are the likely people that might exit, that might jump the ship in next couple of months. And very detailed analytics were run, and it was fairly accurate. Now the question came when we were fairly successful running this for about 3-4 quarters. Somewhere the complaint came to us that, look, you are collecting a lot of data on the people, and it's not ethical, and you are in a way gathering intelligence on the people. So the questions like these are very common. These questions will come. We need to be able to deal with them because we are in an evolution phase. As the situations are evolving, we also need to evolve our responses to those situations. In India, things are yet to be evolved to the extent those are in Europe. In Europe, the privacy laws are even more stricter. There, you have to be far more careful. My sense is, in India also, we will graduate to that level of granularity and those level of sophistication, and I think we need to evolve our systems and processes now. Do we have the ready-made answers? Answer is no. But I think as we grow, as we mature, we got to discover those answers and responses, making sure that we do a balancing act between the privacy of people and the need of the organization. And let me just take half a minute to explain why the balancing act is important. We have studied the concept of pendulum, right? Pendulum, it goes from one extreme to the other extreme. When it goes to any extreme, its velocity or speed becomes 0, and then it comes back. Then it goes to the other extreme, and again the velocity becomes 0. It is running the fastest when it is at the equilibrium, when it is at the balance, when it is at the center. Any organization system will be much more effective when there is a balancing act between the privacy of the people and also the organizational needs. There is a lot of communication that needs to happen to the people around it. Is it easy? Answer is no, but there is no escape from it. These are my 2 cents.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Kumar.
Thank you. I think I'll just build on what Prem just talked about. I think, he spoke about the European laws. We are a European multinational. SKF is based out of Gothenburg, Sweden. And we deal with GDPR issues, day in, day out. There are stringent laws coming in India. We have a digital personal data protection bill. Currently, it's in the parliament, due for approval, which will become an act. And that is more stringent than GDPR. So we as an organizations in India, we have to be very well oriented towards what's coming in going forward. So one is the orientation is important. I'll give you some examples of the balancing act you talked about. And I see Dwarka sir is coming. Thank you for coming here. I think I was not expecting him. Thank you.
Dwarka sir, thank you. we really feel honored. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
He's the one. So I was taking an example of COVID and how we did a data protection and COVID story for SKF. By the way, Dwarka sir helped me save my father during the COVID. So thank you. I just wanted to. He was the one who did whatever he could do. Now my parents I had. One of the reason is sir here. So let me give you a story about SKF on data protection and in the COVID. During the COVID, we used AI and big data to predict the initial symptoms to protect life. So the big data, AI needs to be purposeful driven. It has to have a minimal ask from the employees, leading to what is the purpose, why are you seeking data? And once the work is done, have you deleted the data from your system? Because it needs to be purposeful. We used very effectively the big data to predict who will go through the COVID, because we used to ask for the initial symptoms. And it was a life-saving purpose. I can tell you very proudly, at SKF, barring one person, we did not lose any life during that point in time. And that's a very proud moment for us. And those are the purpose. But when we started asking for those data, people question. People did say that, why are you taking so much of data from us? And what will you do about it? But then it was a very, very effective communication around what is the purpose of the data, what we will do with the data. And we were predicting very, very rightly. And we were making provisions for those people. We converted all our guest houses across the country into hospitals. We connected them digitally. There was a digital, and that was also powered by AI. So the point I'm trying to make from the ethical concern is that what you talked about on balancing, I totally agree with that. And one is balancing, another is purposeful data-driven approach. What is the purpose of the data? You are collecting data for just heck of it, or you are going to do about it? And once the purpose is done, how are you letting go of the data? And how are you transparently communicating? And all these provisions are in DPDP 2024, the bill which is coming in. And organization, it's high time that Indian organization needs to orient themselves with the GDPR provisions and the new laws of the country. Thank you.
So Deep, I want to just add quickly one point here, so just to make you aware, guys, that, and both of the panelists spoke about it. We are running in a stage where we will not have much of the data, and as an organization, we don't collect the data even on gender. We can't take, we have an option to give your salary slips, which are your last salary slips, because we're talking about Europe. Let me tell you about the countries which are like Indonesia and Vietnam and Middle East, like Egypt and Lebanon and all these countries. They're much, much, much advanced in terms of awareness about the data. We can't ask them about their last salary details. They will not share anything. They will not share their gender. They will not share their residential address. you cannot get anything. They will only give you an ID as a copy of it, that's all. An ID number, not even a copy also sometimes. You take all the data from there, whatever you. So we are just very far from the fire. You know, we are not reached yet there. So we are talking about a data, big data, yes, but it will be very, very difficult to collect the data. As was mentioning to you, what data we want to collect, it will not be easy. So yeah.
And there is a committee which in the new bill which will track what is you are seeking and how you are delivering. So there is a full committee on the data compliance.
Right, right. Mr. Mukherjee, your thoughts?
I was just thinking, and here every Tom, Dick and Harry would come and ask me for my Aadhaar card, that I would need your Aadhaar card to proceed further. But anyway, in one of the last conferences I attended, one of the gentlemen from Accenture was presenting a deck that, like Gaurav bhai, you have done for Happiest Mind, how the happiest quotient, they were proposing how healthy is my organization, how important it is to understand that, survey that, analyze the data out of it, and what kind of cost impact in future as an organization one can expect. And yes, people would be very apprehensive to share the secretive data, and like Gautam bhai was sharing how we are discarding the data once we have come to arrive to a decision or conclusion to that.
Thank you, thank you. So seeing the time, I think this will be our last question, and we have to make it quick, okay guys? So, so we have spoken about big data, we have spoken about data-driven decision making. Now, how do we translate them into strategies that can be put to work? Once again.
Yeah, I think, for example, the case that I mentioned earlier about the armed forces, that was just an example of how do you interpret the data and how do you really drive the right strategy, right action. So I can only say that before you really, in a very blindfolded manner, just say that we just need to take action X, think of an action which is counter to this. And many a times you will discover that the counter action of X will be far superior in terms of outcome. I'll give an example here also. The project which I mentioned about the predictive analytics on attrition that we ran for about 3-4 years, which was fairly successful. We were able to bring down the attrition by about 6-7% over a period of 3 years' time. One of the things, immediate knee-jerk reaction used to be that since these are 3 weaknesses that we have, let us work on those. But the coach who worked with us on this also continued to guide us that look, also look at 2 strong points that you have, because of which your people are staying. Which means, do not be overly worried about only why the people are leaving. Also be concerned about what makes people stay. Ask people who have been in the system for, let's say, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Ask them the questions, what makes them stay? Probably they will talk about 3 things. Can we do those 3 things more with larger number of people? And that helped us.
So very simple, and nothing a mantra here. When you want to build a strategy, some strategy will be given by the analytics you receive. Very honestly, what analytics you receive, sometimes it is very, very an eye-opener kind of thing for you, and your strategy is built up from that analytics. Because I've seen in my case, maybe in last 1 or 2 organizations, the intention of collecting and the analysis was very different. When it came up as a final thing, it totally changed the strategy. So whether you're using it for retention purpose or L&D purpose, or maybe for your recruitment and talent acquisition, talent management, retention, anything. So it depends that first is your intent. What you want to align, why you want to do that. So intention has to be clear, and it has to be a top-down approach, not a bottoms-up approach in that case. But the bottoms-up approach can come when the analysis will come to you. So a strategy will be defined by 2 ways, that what intention you have to collect and analyze the data, and then post that, are you open to change that strategy also, that when you get the data, it will change totally. It might change in both the aspects. So you can't drive the strategy based on maybe any assumptions.
No, and I
Kumar.
just add, time's up, but I just want to add, to your point, I think to build the whole culture in the organization, I think the leaders at all level need to do a real good appreciative inquiry in their reviews or in their discussion, because most of the time the biases creeps in, you know. If you don't have an insight or a data, it just made a statement. So I think strategy and culture, I think the cornerstone is data and insight. And I think it's high time that organization must be invested in the infrastructure of the big data, but be wise where you want to use it, how you want to use it. And at the same time, I think it is very, very important to look at what's the purpose and why we are doing it and how are we closing it, you know, because that adds to that propels the whole organization for the future. And today's world, you know, there are so many variables. The predictability has become a big challenge, and big data is going to help us. Whatever we can predict, whether you could predict something, it doesn't work. You predict something, it doesn't work. So the big data is helping us to have a better predictability of the business.
So I can take one live example here very quickly. Here is that when you talk about happiness quotient, so we were trying to capture the data for the people, how well they feel happy and what time, what week and all the stuff. You know what, one insight came up that some of our people, like most of them, were unhappy between 9 to 11. And how we're collecting is that we used to have swipe cards and you have to press a button there as a smiley thing. And when you log into a computer, you have to press again the smiley thing. So this was the day and the various time of the day we were collecting the data. And slicing of the data was done with the team members and the team leaders and other things was happening. 9 to 11 was maximum organization was not happy. It was in Bangalore. And the insight came that, and you will see that maybe it is the people who drive. No. No. It was with women.
The men were driving?
No. It was with women, most of the women, and when we had the focus group discussions with them, it came up that most of the time they don't have the breakfast, that meeting is at 9 o'clock, they are rushing to the office and they are bothering about it, where the maid has come or not. They have just been bothered too much in the morning time. They settle over the period of time during the day, but it's the morning time they are very, very hassled. And if the meeting is kept at 9 o'clock, they are like, oh, rushing to the meeting and I need to prepare for this, laptop is there or not, the presentation is there or not, and everything is there. And some like maid calls, I'm not coming Didi today, oh God, done. So all that stuff came up, and what we did is in that. Now the strategy was this: 9 to 11 will be a silent hour. Do whatever you want to do, and it changed over the period of time. So every 3 months we used to collect it. Every 6 to 9 months time, that 9 to 11 window changed drastically. Just to tell you this, a strategy can crop up. Like you can have a lot of maybe insight from the data, and the data was collected for a happiness quotient. It went there as an engagement. Just to summarize this.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Mukherjee, last comment.
Yes. So just 4 things I think would help in proper strategizing. The first C would be clarity of purpose, the big why. What to do is clear, how to do is clear, why to do. Second would be clarity of communication, especially like the lady was saying from marching sheep. Till the last man standing in the hierarchy, he should know what is the reason behind it. Third would be clarity of roles and responsibility in this entire project, in this entire initiative, intervention. And last would be clarity of ownership. I think this 4 can really, really help in getting that crux or getting the sense behind why the management, why the company, why the entire team is thinking of getting it rolled out. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, speakers. Thank you, audience, for being so nice and patient. That's a wrap. Thanks.
Also, big round of applause for Deep for moderating it so well. Thank you, Deep.
Thank you so much, Deepan. Like I said, that's a wrap. We have more to go. There's only this wrap. A big